afternoon, everyone. This is Kennedy, host of the KiDz HuB BooK KluB and president of the KiDz HuB Media Network. I'm back this week to review To Kill a Mockingbird for you. I hope that everyone enjoyed the interview that I had with Nikhil last week. I know that came as a surprise. Once again, this review is brought to you by our wonderful sponsor, Kids Need to Read. You can visit their website, which is www.kidsneedtoread.org. So this week, I originally was planning on reviewing chapters 13 and 14, but I decided that I'll spend half of my time reviewing chapter 13 and then the other half of my time sharing with you all how to have enough time to read during the week or along with your school schedule, because I know that that's something that a lot of people know that they'd like to do or that they have to do, but they can't see it fitting along with all their extracurricular activities and so on. So I'll do the review first. So chapter 13, as maybe I mentioned in a previous review, the Gem Scout have an aunt whose name is Alexandra, and it's their dad's sister. And she doesn't normally live in Macomb, Alabama, but she thinks that it's necessary for her to be around because they don't have their mother. So she thinks that she needs to be that maternal figure in the household. So I guess I approach that with a bit of ambivalence. I think that she has good intentions, but I don't think she necessarily fits in with the down-to-earth, humble family style because, as I mentioned, I think from the first chapter of this book, the Finches are very well off. They are pretty wealthy in a time historically that was very economically difficult for people because it was right around the Great Depression. So the dad is a lawyer and the family is pretty wealthy, and I don't think she knows how to combine that with the atmosphere of Macomb, Alabama, and the job of service that Atticus Finch carries out. So her intentions are on the right side, but she, the way she executes her intentions aren't the most efficient, especially since the role that the children play in that community. So, not to mention, they also have Calpurnia in the house, who I mentioned 2 weeks ago or last week is the African-American house, I guess you could call her a house servant, but she does also some caretaking of the children, so I feel like that is pretty much her role as well, and they treat her with great respect. So Alexandra believes that the children should be more enthusiastic about their family and where they come from, which is a family that is very successful, but Atticus has approached this very differently since he doesn't want them to learn how to boast or make other children feel less than. So she encourages Atticus to sit the children down and tell them more about their family, but it doesn't work, and at the end Scout ends up crying for whatever reason because it's just so unlike what they're used to. But I think that just shows that once again how humble of a person Atticus is in the way that he raises his children, and that their reaction to someone coming in and imposing a different style or personality trait just does not fit there. So chapter 14 does approach the coming of the trial that Atticus is working on, which is pretty much the apex of the book. So I'm excited for chapter 14, but I decided to save that so I could talk to our listeners more about having time to read outside of class. And I know that that's something that I have trouble with because of the classes I take and then the homework and then doing the reading that I have to read for school, sometimes the book that we have to read for my French class, sometimes even a book that we might have to read on the side for a math class, which most people wouldn't expect. But the way that I've come to, or I guess my solution, is that when you read, it doesn't necessarily have to be a novel. You can read shorter things. If you find a segment or a section, I should say, of New York Times, for example, that really interests you. Like I know when I was younger, on Sundays, there would be a printout of like the science section of the Times, and I used to love that, so my mom would bring that home for me because it was so short and I'd have time to read it. So I think my main suggestion would be to find something small that you can start with so that you can feel accomplished, because I know that it's difficult to start a novel knowing you're not going to have enough time to read it, and then 6 months have passed and you still haven't gotten to complete it, and then you feel like you're procrastinating when really you just haven't had the time to get to it or the time to sit down and read a chunk of 50 pages. But if you start with even smaller novels, so I know that I reviewed Of Mice and Men a while ago, and I reviewed The Crucible, and both of those books are if you just look at them from the side, like just in profile, are pretty small, around 100 pages. So those aren't too bad if you wanted to actually finish a book. But otherwise, articles in the newspaper that don't have to be those current events. They could be the more interesting home and lifestyle sections, or the science section, or even comics. People might underestimate comics, but I think, just to reinstate what the point of reading is, it's not always to be intellectually challenging for you to try to figure out what the book is trying to say. Often the books that I choose for the KiDz HuB BooK KluB are books that are a little bit more on that challenging level, that are loaded with symbolism or allegory of some sense. But in general, if you want to read on your own, it doesn't have to be something that's that challenging. Just reading, being able, that practice, that exercising that part of your brain where you just have to look at something and be able to extract what it's trying to tell you, is super important. So I hope that helps if anyone is having trouble getting to read when you have time, because I know that at the end of the day, when you're exhausted from homework, it's easier to pick up the remote and turn on the TV, which is also great for leisure. But even if you can take 15 minutes out of your day to do so, you'll see that it'll help your comprehension skills in whatever class you have. So I hope that does help, and I'm really looking forward to reviewing Chapter 14 for everyone next week. That's Kennedy on KiDz HuB, giving kids a voice in the world.